we're delighted to welcome you to our regular second Saturday of the month Utah Valley Technology and Genealogy Group meeting. Our UV TAG is our acronym for it. This is Saturday morning, the 14th of September of 2024. And I'm Don Snow. I'm in Provo, Utah. And our presenter today is online with us, Rick Clementson, and he's going to be talking about DNA here in just a couple of minutes. In case you're brand new to our UV TAG group, we've been meeting now for I think it's 34 years, since 1991, I think was when we first started. And it's a grassroots organization that started here in Provo at Brigham Young University. And we started out, we called it the old Utah Valley PAF Users Group for Personal Ancestral File in the early days. We changed the name 15 years ago when we started doing more stuff. We publish a monthly newsletter that's really worthwhile. It's Marilyn Thompson is our editor on that, and she does just a wonderful job of collecting articles and information. And if you'd like a sample copy of that, there's a place on our website on uvtag.org where you can sign up and we'll send you a sample copy. If you want to join the organization, it's only $15 a year, and then you get the newsletters every month, and you can watch these programs on Zoom, which is more interactive than on Facebook. But you can anybody can watch on Facebook. Let's see. I think that's enough about the commercials for today. Let's start. We always start with a word of prayer. And Jerry Castillo, who's our host today, is going to offer our invocation for us. Jerry?
Thank you. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet together and to talk about family history and to talk about our DNA and how that can help us and affect our search for family. We pray, Father, for thy spirit to be with us and bless our speaker and those attending, that may all enjoy a wonderful experience and gain understanding in this topic. We ask thy blessing upon us in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Rick Clementson. I first got acquainted with Rick back in the middle 1990s. What's that? That's nearly 30 years ago now. Rick first got interested in genealogy by taking a class. And Rick, I don't know for sure, but I would guess that was a class by J. Grant Stevenson, who ran a genealogy store here in Provo and taught at Brigham Young University. My guess is that was the one that converted you to genealogy. Rick, in the meantime, got interested in that, and then I remember Rick attending our classes when we did these weekday classes in the BYU library before they remodeled it back in the 1990s. I remember first getting acquainted with you, Rick, in those days. He's gotten involved with the DNA and realizing that DNA can help in all kinds of ways in family history, and in particular in checking out your tree to see if it's accurate. He gotten involved with helping adoptees use the DNA to find their birth parents. And he's helped hundreds of people find their birth parents. And I think in the class after this is the main presentation now. In the class after this, following, he's going to give us some examples of that and let us ask some questions as well. Rick, let's turn the time over to you for now until about 11 a.m. Then there'll be maybe a 5 or 10 minute break, and then we'll start the class after that. So, Rick, you're on.
All right, great. So I'm excited to be here. I've loved genealogy since I caught the bug back in 1984, and just could never get enough of it. And so my parents were the ones that got me started, and they had collected a lot of information, but I helped put it on the computer for them, and then learned how to research, and then learned how to help others. Back in the 90s, I also started up a group to help the family history technicians at some of the main family history centers by they had a way that they had it on the computer so that you could look things up on the computer. The rest of us were all using CDs that we'd swap in and out. And one of the people in the group figured out how to put that on a personal computer. And so we helped people throughout the world, family history centers throughout the world, set that up on computers, which was a lot of fun. So I thought I'd researched everything that I had on my tree. And so I had kind of grown a little bit of distant on it because I'd gotten as far back as I thought I could on my tree. And this tree right here is one that I share with my parents. So they've done a lot of work, added a lot of nice pictures, but it kind of maxed out. Then about 10 years ago, my parents did a 23andMe DNA test just so they could get the health results. And as they got those matched, they were also matched up with some of their people they shared DNA with. And several of those people asked my parents to help them identify their birth parents since we shared DNA. And then my parents would turn those people over to me. And that's how I got introduced to the DNA world and helping adopted people identify their birth parents. So I wanted to introduce or review some of the new resources or tools that Ancestry's added to help us organize our DNA matches and help figure out how we're related. The first thing they added, they have gone through and somehow figured out that this group of people are on one parent's side, and then the other matches are on another parent's side. So when you look at your matches, you have an option where you could edit that parent and assign it to either your paternal or maternal side. So you can see parent 1, parent 2 is how they show up initially. There's also some that are on both sides. And then some they haven't yet figured out that are down in the unassigned. So by one of these parents, you can click the Edit Parent button, and then it brings up a window here on the right side of the screen that you could identify this as a maternal. Parent 1 is the maternal or the paternal side. Now, when you look at any of your matches that are assigned to a group, you can see that David Cobia right here is in the maternal side, and so on. So that can help you quickly identify at least which half of the tree one of your matches is on. Often the person does not even have a tree, but because of this, you know one side or the other that they're associated on. Now, there's a great article that was written a number of years ago called The Leeds Method. And so if you Google search for the Leeds Method with Ancestry dots, it reviews how you could organize your matches into groups or clusters. And what they recommend is that you go down to the first match that's less than 400 centimorgans and click on that person's name, and then click on shared matches. You can add that person to a group, or you can create a custom group for those matches. So here, my mom has kind of gone overboard with this as she's tried to figure out where each of her DNA matches fit. So she has a number of groups where she can organize a brand new person. These very top matches right here are her 3 siblings, and then we get a grandchild and a niece. So they are obviously in almost all of the groups. But as you go more distant, you're going to have people who are not in groups at all. So I brought up my son's DNA, who didn't have any groups set up. So it's an easy new environment to show you what this would look like. I scrolled down to less than 400. So this match shares 387 centimorgans, which is about a first cousin once removed. So this is my wife's first cousin. Then you click on Add Group. My son has no groups at this moment. And then we can create a custom group. Usually I would just name it Susan Lampson. But in this case, because I have my son linked to the tree, we can see here at the bottom left where the shared match between both of these guys is Adolphus Rene Whitehead. So I didn't have to use Susan's name. I could put in the second great grandfather for that. And when you can give the group a name, and then you can assign a color. It has a default color, but you're welcome to change that. You can also edit this name in the future. So I might start out with Susan Lamson, and then as I do more research, know that this is part of the Whitehead group that I want to assign the match to. So I can always come back and edit the name later on. So then I'm going to click on the checkbox to assign Susan to the Whitehead group. And then when I go back and look at the matches, or let me back up one thing. I clicked on the shared matches here. Now, Ancestry just came out with a new feature called the Pro version. So to teach this class, I made sure I signed up for it. The Pro version would show you how much the person shares with this shared common match. So that's something that you may want to consider if you're trying to solve a genealogy puzzle. A lot of the other DNA sites, including 23andMe and MyHeritage, also show you what those matches are. Ancestry right now is charging extra for that same feature, but it can come in very handy. So I'm going to click on shared matches, and then I'm going to click on the add to edit group, and that gives me a checkbox next to each of these matches where I can go through and click on the checkbox. And I work my way all the way down to about 90 centimorgans. Then here on the top right corner, you can see I'm going to add, remove 49 people. And then I'm going to click the plus sign on the Whitehead group, and it will add those 49 people to this Whitehead group that I've set up. Then as I come back in and look at the shared matches, you can see that Erin Whitehead is part of that group. So she was one of those 49 people that I added to the group. Then I look at the next people that are not yet part of a group. So the very top one here, I have David Cobia, and I could repeat the process and create a Cobia group and add David and the shared matches to that Cobia group. And then I could repeat that over and over again so that all my close matches are assigned to groups. And that helps me organize them into these buckets. Now, here's my mom's DNA, and she had a match come up here, Christopher Hale. And my mom obviously had a lot of groups already set up. And as a new match, Christopher was not in one of those buckets. And he's at 498 centimorgans, which is a very close match. And so it creates a mystery. How do we figure out how Christopher is related to the family? So a lot of you guys have great trees. You've researched things. You're very comfortable and confident on what you've researched. As you work through this process, you're going to find people that you don't know how they're related. And it's fun to solve that mystery. There's a little bit of that new energy to start over as you find that new person that will want to solve the mystery. And so it adds a lot of fun back into doing genealogy. So for Christopher, my mom went through and added notes here. My mom shares 498, but we tested her sister and her two brothers. So you can see the notes there where what she put in, how much they share with Christopher Hale. So when we put on the shared matches, because of the pro version, we have in here that Christopher shares this much DNA with a person and corresponds. So that helps us. But over here on the right side of the screen, you can see these letters for the groups that each of these shared matches are in. And so you can see a lot of CWs, which are for Coyer Woolworth. And then down the second one from the bottom is my mom's second cousin, Steve Jennison, and they share the Benson Jordan group. And so when we bring up the tree for my mom, here at the top, her father's side is the Benson Jordan and also the Coyer Woolworth. So Christopher Hales is related on her father's side. So having these groups helps you quickly narrow the search down. So it'd be on the paternal side, but we would also know that he's confirmed on both sides, both Benson Jordan and the Coyer Woolworth. So here's Christopher and then his tree and the shared DNA with my mom. And then she has notes in the top right corner over here for her siblings. there's a tool called DNA Painter, and the programmer here created a tool. So if you go to dnapainter.com, click on tools in the top menu, there's one of the tools is a shared CM project. So they went through and Blaine Bettinger did a big research project, collected thousands of people self-identifying who their match and how much DNA they shared. And they built a very, very large table so that they could project the estimates. So here at 498 centimorgans, 90% of the time, or 90% of the people that self-reported would have one of these relationships. And you can see the list there in gray. 5% of the time it was a relationship down below. And then 5% was this, the next group, which I think we're in, is this half niece, half nephew. Now, the benefit of testing multiple family members, again, my mom only shared 498, but her sister shared 872. At 872, you can see that 97% of the time it is this relationship here that the half niece, half nephew is part of. Then I averaged the 4 siblings together, which is 669, and still 58% of the time it would be half niece, half nephew. Then if you, on the bottom half of each of these pages that I didn't scroll down to, this tool shows you the relationships that are possible at this match level. So at 669, it could be one of these highlighted relationships. Then in this, we'll look at the half niece, half nephew. On average, that would be 871 is what was reported. Then, but it has a range of 492 to 1315. So you see my mom was just on the very low end of that, but my aunt was right there in the middle. So this gives you a target to look for. Now, I find this tool very helpful. There was one gal that I was helping identify her birth father, and she had a DNA match where she shared 150 centimorgans, and she contacted them and said, hey, I think your father is my birth father, which obviously at 150 centimorgans is not a half sibling. So this helps check yourself, help check what you're thinking, check the possibilities so you don't go make that kind of phone call when it's not close at all. Okay, so here's Christopher, and we have took his information from his tree, and then in my tree, I added Christopher, and I added the information from his tree. Now, he only had his father and his grandparents on his father's side. I went through and extended that quite a bit farther. I'm looking for names. If my family name popped in, that would help me figure out how they're related. On his mom's side, his mom is interesting because she is in the California marriage records, is listed twice, once with the Kathy Furlano and once as Kathy Benson. So it makes me wonder if the relationship is through her father or how she picked up the Benson name when she registered for her marriage record. So we still haven't figured that out. We're still wanting to have Kathy do a DNA test so we can see if she might be my mom's half sister. But this gives us an area of focus that we can do this. Now, a couple more things. Since I've added Christopher to the tree, back here in this match level, right below the relationship and the amount of shared DNA, there's a button where you can connect to tree. That brings up this right side of the screen where I can type Christopher's name, and it brings up people in my tree. So I can click on the link and match his DNA to his location or to him in the tree. After I do that, you can see it now has a green pedigree right to the left of half nephew. And then instead of connect to tree, it now says view in tree. So I can quickly click on that view in tree and it'll take me right into the tree, right where I have Christopher. So it makes my navigation go much, much quicker. Now, another clues to look at, if I look at the ethnicity, so down in the bottom half of the tree, you have trees, ethnicity, shared matches. I'm going to click on the ethnicity. Here in the ethnicity, it brings up my mom on the left, and Christopher Hale here on the right. So they share the Scotland, Ireland, and then the indigenous Americas north, which my mom and I both also share, that those are the ethnicities that they share. Now, what's interesting as you come down on the right, Christopher's also sharing the rest of his results, which they have an option to share or not. But you see that he has 39% from Guam, 10% from Southern Italy, France, Western Philippines, Norway, so on. So that on this, again, my theory is that they share one of Christopher's grandparents is shared. And so this corresponds well with matching up with 1/4 of his pedigree. But I'm interested in the Guam side as I'm building out his tree because I didn't find that yet in the tree that we had. So I learned more about my matches than they frequently even know about themselves. And sometimes it scares them. So I try not to show them how much we actually know and can discover over the internet. But by building out his tree, I can discover a lot of things and possibly come up with clues on how they fit in. I love obituaries, other things like that help fill in more of the pieces of the family that sometimes helps me bring it all together. Now there's a tool that I use. There's a website called draw.io, and they've renamed since I started using them as app.diagrams.net, but I find it easier to type draw.io, that it still works. It allows me to create charts like this. So it allows me to drag in a box, assign a color, type text in it, create a line between boxes. So I created this using their drawing program. And here are the DNA matches. And I have Christopher Hale here in green, and then it's one of his parents. But then I put in the matches and put in how much shared DNA there was with those matches. So this is a way that helps me organize, but also helps me track down how many generations down the relationship might be. Now, in solving some of these ones in the past, I've solved a couple other family mysteries. So I'm going to stop for just a second on Christopher Hale. And if you come over here towards the right, we have a match, Carmen Harbrugger, 140 centimorgans that she shares with Christopher Hale. When I first did my first DNA test 10 years ago, Carmen was my highest match at the time. So this was a long time ago, but her tree did not match my tree. And that really bugged me. So to solve that, I tested both of my parents, their first cousins, some of the second cousins, so that I'd have a number of reference points to track that down. In figuring that out, I found out that her grandmother was was the daughter of my great grandmother, and was placed for adoption back in 1901. So the DNA helped me solve that family mystery and connect the family together there. But unfortunately, in doing that, I also found that my mom's, we tested my mom's cousin, Margaret Miner, and found out that she was only a half first cousin to my mom, meaning that her mother was a half sibling to my grandfather. So that's one of the warnings that they try to put on the DNA testing is you may expose some unknown things in your family. So be open for that and then try to solve, get clues on how the mystery goes. So you see the dashed lines that I have here because there's half relationships to both Awana and to Vivian back here. But that was important as I go into this next tool. You can take all of these tools, all these details, and there's in DNA Painter, there's a utility called What Are the Odds? And you can enter in this information, or you could download, export a GEDCOM file from your genealogies tree and import that and use that as part of what you're researching. So here I added this information, added, all of Esther Coyer, Zudro, Benson, my grandfather, my mom and her siblings, and I put in their birth year and how much DNA they shared. And then I put in that Awana Benson was my grandfather's half sister. So you see that half relationship right there. And then how much my mom's cousin, Margaret Miner, shares with Christopher. And then the utility will go through and create hypothesis. So the highest probability is that my mom has a half sibling who is the parent of Christopher Hale. So that helps focus the attention. Now, there's also a slight chance that that half sibling could have a child who is the parent of Christopher Hale. So this calls out the different possibilities and helps you focus in on where you want to go. Okay, so that is a great tool. Now, once we work with Christopher Hale, if we could get Christopher to load his DNA to another website called GEDmatch. So gedmatch.com was started by a couple of gentlemen as a side project many, many years ago. They've since retired and sold it to another company to handle. But what GEDmatch allowed you to do, it allowed you to load your DNA, but people from other companies could load their DNA and you could match up with them where you wouldn't even see them. You know, if you've tested on Ancestry, but they tested on 23andMe, you wouldn't even know that you were matches. But if both of you had uploaded to GEDmatch, you would show up as matches to each other. So I had one gal that I helped identified who I thought her birth father was. He had a daughter who had done a 23andMe test, or she had done an Ancestry test. The person I was helping had done a 23andMe. So we had both of them load their DNA to GEDmatch, and it brought up that they were half sisters. So without needing to test on both sites initially, we were able to confirm the relationship very, very quickly. So on this right here, if I could get Christopher to load his DNA, it would show how much DNA he shared, but also it would show on the xDNA how much xDNA he would share. Now, for us gentlemen, we only receive xDNA from our mothers. For women, you receive xDNA from both your father and from your mother. So for Christopher, any xDNA he had would only come through his mother. If he was sharing xDNA with my mother, then we would know that the match is through Christopher's mother. If he did not share xDNA at all at this close relationship, then we would know the match would be going through Christopher's father. So we're still trying to get Christopher to load his xDNA or his DNA to GEDmatch, but that can quickly answer a question for you if it's a very, very close match. Okay, this is the Margaret Miner that I mentioned that should be a first cousin to my mother. Now, a first cousin would share about 800 centimorgans, but you can see that Margaret and my mother only share 339. Also, on the shared groups over here in the bottom right, they only share the Coyer-Woolworth side, and they're not sharing the Benson side that was expected. So this helps confirm that this cousin is a half cousin through their shared grandmother. So again, you can quickly find answers to some of those family questions and narrow down the search. So to figure out Margaret's grandfather that's different than what was expected, I went through and repeated the same process that I've done to help many people. And I found that she was related to this Rainey family. And in doing that, one of the matches is here towards the right is John Patrick Durkin. Turns out that John is adopted. And so I researched this and was able to figure out that his father was Donald Rainey. So in doing this, and I also found the matches on his mother's side. So in doing this, you can solve a lot of these mysteries for yourself, but you're going to find a lot of other people that you can help as you go through the path, and you can help them find their answers and their truth. Some of the times these projects have taken years. This is one where I've helped several siblings who had shared the same birth father. Um, and you can see all the different matches that we collected over the time and figured out the connections. And we found out that his birth father was an illegitimate child. And it took us a long time to track down who the birth father's birth father was. And we figured it out. But sometimes you gather a lot of information to piece all the pieces together. And in this process, I helped about over half dozen different people solve their family mysteries. Because by the time I solved this, I knew so much about the family, I was able to help a lot of people. Now, this right here is my father-in-law's pedigree chart. And he's got a great tree, a lot of relatives, a lot of people who have done DNA, who've done genealogy. So we have a lot of confirmation on his tree. So the next step was, how do we confirm that, for example, that we know back farther who the match is? So if you look on his paternal line, it comes back to a Daniel Cobia in 1714. Do we really know that Daniel Cobia is his direct male ancestor? Or was there adoption or something else in here that kind of throws things off? So what I did is I researched and found, first of all, I had my father-in-law do a Y-DNA test through Family Tree DNA. But when he did it, he had no close matches at all. And again, this was 5 or 6 years ago, where now there'd be more matches. So what I did is I traced down another direct male descendant from Daniel Cobia, and I sent him a free Y-DNA test from Family Tree DNA. And this Randy Cobia is the one that came back, and you can see that he at 37 markers, there's only one difference in 37 markers. And that is exactly what we would expect. I'm going to click here on the right side of the screen. So you have Randy Cobia. On the far right side of the screen, there's a looks almost like a calendar, but it's for tips is what they call it. And this is what would expected on 37 markers. They would expect the common ancestor to be born about 1750, and it could be in a 1450 to 1900 range. But that matches exactly what we expected that to do. So it's nice to get that confirmation, first of all, that David and Randy are related to each other, and that they match the share the right amount of DNA for where we expect the common ancestor to be. Now, you can also, when you do a Y-DNA test, come down to fewer markers. This one is at 25. So when I first did the test, you can see this third person right here. And I would slaughter the name if it's a Mehran Aslam from Pakistan, or is where the family originally from. And they share a difference of 2 across 25 markers. So 23 of 25 markers they share. That matching level would be back possibly about the 1300s or back a little bit farther. So that is interesting things to learn about the possible family history at a long-term distance. Now, one of the people that I helped that was adopted, we struggled to find his matches. There weren't a whole lot of matches. And so we did a Y-DNA test. When we looked at the Y-DNA results, notice here in the surnames how there's a whole bunch of Crows. And that really helped us in our research, so that when we were looking at DNA matches and trying to come down the different lines, when I found one of those that married a Crow, that gave me the focus. And it turned out that they only had a single child. And I was able to find that child's daughter, who turned out to be the half sister. And she shared a picture of this gentleman's birth parents when they were freshmen in college. And so not only did he find a half sister, he also got a picture of his birth parents together as freshmen in college back in 1940. So the DNA can open up incredible doors to answer questions on that you would just never know the answer to. Okay, another gentleman gave me access to his 23andMe results. And then in 23andMe, it will also tell you the mitochondria. Now, mitochondria comes directly from our mothers. And so we only pass it down from the mothers. And so if I shared mitochondria with someone, it would come through my mother's back until we got to a common ancestor. So here I looked at his results and I found one of his matches, Phyllis, that shared the exact same type of mitochondria. So what we know is that Matthew Todd's mother somehow would be related to Phyllis's mother's mother. Then the shared DNA was 108 centimorgans, which is about a second cousin once removed. So that gives us a ballpark on where to look. And so I went through and put it in a tree and then also into the chart on what I found. So in Phyllis's, her great grandmother was Edith Adelaide Justice. And then I researched all of Edith's direct female descendants till I could get to one. And it turned out that we identified the birth mother. So this whole process from when I first had access to 23andMe took me less than an hour before I was able to show Matthew a picture of his mother. And it's kind of earth shattering to find that and see a living relative so quickly. Now, Ancestry, just in this past week or so, changed their process a little bit. So here I am looking at the DNA, but there's no longer a link where I can select the different DNA kits that I've been invited to. So when I click on the down arrow just to the right of my name, it brings up this list. And in this list, it now allows you to start typing first or last name, and it filters the list down very quickly to ones that match what you're typing. So that's a nice speedier feature. Then here, once I'm looking at the shared matches, you can click on filter by and click on the unviewed. That would quickly filter the list to any matches that you have not yet looked at. So you can see the little blue dot to the left of each of these pictures. That's showing that this person or this match is something I haven't looked at yet. So that helps you quickly focus instead of having to page through your DNA matches. Then you can click on that and then try to figure out the connection with that person that you haven't looked at previously and assign them to the right match groups and others. Okay, so I ran through that a little bit faster. I get excited and talk a little bit faster. That ends what I have in this. I have more information that I can show, and we can show those more in the next class. I don't know if there's an easy way to relay any questions that might have come up while we showed this, or if we'll want to deal with those questions in the next class.
Rick, I had a question. You talked about adding people to your ancestry tree. And so I'm just curious, how do you know where to add them to your tree?
Okay, so this is one of my gripes, and I griped to Ancestry on this.
Okay.
And because they have not made it easy on adding them. So when you go to trees, and I'll just go into a research tree right here, and there's no easy way to add a brand new person that's not related to one of these people.
Right.
So if I add a person right here, Ancestry currently only allows me.
We can't see your screen. We're just looking at
it's on the bottom. Sorry, I have 4 screens and I hadn't moved it up here.
Okay.
So when I want to add a relative or add a brand new person that's not related,
Not related. Okay.
there, my only option is to link to somebody on my tree, add a relative. So here I'll add a child. And then Ancestry helps you out by replacing whatever you type here with the parent's, the father's surname. It's a real nuisance. And so we'll click save. But there's nothing in here that allows me to have this person. They just need one more check button right here to have it be an unlinked person.
Okay.
And so I'm hoping that Ancestry eventually adds that. I've complained to them several times on that. Then the person will show up here. And then the way to get them off is I have to go into the profile. And then up here in the top right corner, edit relationships, and then delete anyone that I had to connect them to when I added them initially. So then this person is freestanding. They're not related to anyone. So like when I added Christopher Hales to my tree, I went through the same process and added him, removed him from whoever he was connected to. My mom is who I had him connected to initially. And then he's there sitting by himself, and I can start building out his tree from that point. But it's a real nuisance. So thank you for asking.
Okay, so then also, can you show us how you ask people to share their tree in Ancestry?
So I'm usually corresponding with them through email or something else. And then I send them instructions on how to invite me. So let me show. So you could send a message and ask them to invite you. But here's the process. I click on the tree itself once I'm in my tree. And then I usually come down to settings, and there's a sharing button right here that would take you directly to it. So if you click on the settings, then there's a sharing right here, this invitations area. If I go here to invite, it takes me to that same invitations area. And then I usually am sending them an email and putting in their email address and then setting the role. The role can be either a guest, which can't see a whole lot, a contributor, which can see some things, they can add notes and other things, or an editor, which would also have the ability to see live people. So in my family one, all my family members are editors so that any of us can be working on it and adding it.
Have you had any problems result from adding people as editors?
No, but part of what I do on that, so that's another good question. Here, when I create a tree, I have my tree, which is pristine, that I don't want to mess up.
Mhm.
And I create another tree. So you see a lot of these are called research trees.
Oh,
And so I created a brand new tree and call it whatever research tree. And then a lot of times when I do that, in my privacy settings, I might set this to be a private tree and not showing up in the indexes, because I'm going to throw a lot of ideas or possible matches there that are not necessarily true or related. I'm just throwing all my DNA matches into this sandbox that I can try to figure out how they're connected or related. And a lot of them I don't need to add over to my pristine tree. I can just have this sandbox that I'm playing in. So if I'm working with an adopted person, I can invite them to this research tree and not be, it's not my perfect tree that I'm maintaining.
so do you download a GEDCOM and then upload it again to the research tree then? Is that how?
It's an option. So yes, if you had your tree that you had in either your genealogy program, or you had
Mhm.
another tree right here in Ancestry,
Mhm.
you can maybe go down to this. I'm going to create and manage trees. Then at the bottom of this, I can go to tree settings. Let's go to tree settings right here. And then this gives me an option to export the tree as a GEDCOM
Oh.
file.
Okay.
Then when I'm creating a new tree, let's go back here to trees, create manage trees. And then I can, down here at the bottom, I can create a new tree, or I can upload a GEDCOM file. And then that would create the tree for me from that GEDCOM file. So you may want to export just a portion of your genealogy tree. And then you could imported as a GEDCOM file in this tree that you're searching.
Wow. Do you use the BYU has the thing that says, how are we related? Or how are two people related? Do you use that very much then? Or have you, has that helped you at all?
I don't, my parents are don't have a lot of family that have done genealogy or that are part of that that database, and so it hasn't helped as much.
So Family Search isn't a real help to you.
No, it's a great search, but I'm not necessarily finding close relatives that I'm related through Family Search.
Through Family Search. How about, I know my husband, it's like 90% of his Danish relatives are in there. And that so I don't know if you found MyHeritage to be better.
So it depends on the part of the world. And so part of that is you typically want to be in all we call it fishing in all the different ponds.
Okay.
And so you'd want your DNA in Ancestry, but you can download your Ancestry DNA and upload it to Family Tree DNA, to MyHeritage, to GEDCOM, and then there's a Living DNA that I'm helping someone with right now, is another site that she has some matches on that we want to look at. And then you can also do a test at 23andMe, and that way you're looking at all the different ponds for where that match shows up. There's a gentleman that we searched a long time to try to narrow down to his birth mother, and it turned out that he had close relatives who had tested at 23andMe. So when he did a test at 23andMe, we quickly found them, and within days had figured out who his birth mother was.
Wow.
So you'd want to be on each of the sites. And for those of us that have great trees, that's a place where you can bless and help more of your relatives, because your DNA would be there where they could find you and you could help them figure out the connection.
So it sounds like if you tested Ancestry, you can download and contribute to several other places. So do you recommend people start their testing at Ancestry then usually?
I prefer Ancestry because they have the largest database, so they have the best chance of finding close matches. Also on Ancestry, a lot of the matches have trees, and that helps you know how they connect in. Some of the other sites, the end users don't really have trees at all, so it's harder to get through. But in your DNA, up here in the settings, in the top right, once that loads. Oh, they changed it on me. So you would download, and you can download your DNA.
Okay.
Then when you go to Family Tree DNA, at the top here, you can load your DNA and create create an account, upload your DNA for free.
Okay.
Then on MyHeritage, that's also possible. But on MyHeritage, since I have an account on MyHeritage, I can go through and I can upload DNA for other people. So here, as I'm helping people, I have other DNA that I've uploaded, and then I can invite that person to it. So this helps me facilitate getting that on there.
So you invite them to be a member of your tree? Is that
no, on these DNA results.
Oh, invite her to view her DNA results. Okay.
Right.
You had talked about how people have shared their DNA with you, and so let's say you give somebody a kit, and how do you, you're paying for the kit, but yet they own their DNA, and how do you get them to share their DNA with you? Do you put a letter in? Do you?
So that's their choice. Some of the people, I've given away hundreds of DNA kits.
Okay.
And that some people have said thanks, and that was it, and they've never asked me for help in evaluating their results. But a lot of the people I'm doing now, part of the times where we send someone a DNA kit, And we've got just did this last week. So let me. So on Kier Isaac is a gentleman from South Carolina that we're helping, and he had a new match come up, and his match is a half sister. And so we have an idea who the birth father is.
Mhm.
So we sent out, so here's his mother and here's his half sister. And we sent out, we buy DNA kits whenever they're on sale. And there's been recently on sale for $39. So I can get 5 or more at a time. What we did with the possible birth father, we created a new Gmail account with the person's name and then DNA at gmail.com. And then we used that to create an ancestry account and then registered the DNA kit for that ancestry account. And at the process, invited ourselves to the DNA results. And then as we sent the DNA kit, we also gave that login information to the ancestry to the person that we're sending it to, so that they know that we've set up a Gmail account for them, an ancestry account. We registered the DNA and invited ourselves to the DNA. And so that they know, so we've done that ahead of time for them. Because the technology is overwhelming sometimes.
Yes.
For them to even register a DNA account can be a little overwhelming. So we've done all of those steps for them and gave them the sign-in information so they could go in and remove us from access if they want. But we've taken care of a lot of the hurdles for them.
Yes, it is. So that is excellent. I wish now, how you're saying, oh, that would have solved this problem that I had. This is so very helpful, this maneuvering through. So I have done something similar to that with a cousin with a 23andMe that did the Y-DNA, but now I'm getting emails asking him questions about, whether he likes this or likes that, and did you know that your DNA means that you are yada yada. And then I was just curious, is there a way, since I'm not interested in that?
Yeah. So if you go back in, you could edit that his 23andMe account, and you can change the email address that's associated with.
Okay, and then so that then they'll go to him, and then
that correct.
No, but then I will still have.
You'd still be able to sign in.
Okay.
If you unless he changes the password or something, but
Okay.
until then you'd still be able to sign in.
Sign in, but he's the one getting the emails.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much for this. We have just a couple more minutes. There is the one site that you use to create your little boxes.
Right. And so the website I go to is draw.io, and you can see draw.io.
Okay.
So let me do that right here again. So I won't push the enter key. Draw.io.
Okay.
But as soon as you go into that, it renames the top to app.diagrams.net. So that's what they changed to. But I find it easier to type draw.io.
Okay.
And
Rick,
then, yeah.
We have a question from Facebook.
Oh.
I put it in the chat for you from Sue Adams. Do you see the chat?
Yep.
Okay.
So they're looking for a mystery paternal grandfather, which is what I had with my mom's first cousin. He had a mystery maternal grandfather. And so if you have a direct male descendant, in our case, it came through a female, so we weren't able to do a Y-DNA test. But if you had a son of this mystery paternal grandfather and a son, you could do a Y-DNA test, and that would give you a surname. So just like the graphic that we showed where it showed the Crow surname, that really helped us focus our research on that surname. Now, that doesn't always work. In my case, my last name is Norwegian, and we thought it would be a great idea to change our surname every generation. And so that the Y-DNA doesn't help me very much because every generation is a completely different surname. But if the family is from an area where they kept surnames for many generations, then you should have Y matches that share that same surname. So yes, it can be very helpful to get that surname with shared that. Now the other thing is the autosome, the ATDNA. Just looking up to make sure I know what that means. So the autosomal you definitely could use. We've solved that. The okay. Yep. So that's the autosomal DNA would go across, and so we solve that all the time on the DNA. So like an example of my very first case where her grandmother didn't match my tree, and we found that her great grandmother or her grandmother was adopted. And we used the autosomal DNA to solve that, to narrow down the matches, know which part of the family they tied into, and we're able to figure it out from that. Yep. And you can get matches with fourth and sixth cousins. Definitely can solve it. Now, the other thing that I haven't really gone into, and we can do this next hour. Oh, sorry, that's frustrating. Is a lot of times when I have an adopted person, you're going to have clusters of matches that you don't know how they're related. And so you have one cluster, that bucket of apples, identify their common ancestor that they share, research the descendants of that person. Then you've got another bucket of apples, identify a common ancestor, research the descendants. And a lot of times you'll find out where one descendant, a descendant from one group marries the descendant from the other group. And that would bring it to how you could be tied to both of those groups. And so that's how we work down to that desired ancestor, is because we have those buckets coming from several different groups and they merge into the person we're looking for.
This is a huge amount of research to do what you had just said, researching down and that. So do your parents help you do that? Do you have other people who like to do research that help you with that? Or how does
Nope. There's just a whole bunch of volunteers like myself. They're called DNA Search Angels.
Oh, the Search Angels. Okay.
Yep. And we just volunteer our time. So there is a Facebook group called DNA Search Angel. I'm not part of that group, but that's the title that's given people that do what I do.
Okay. And the DNA Angels, for example, this person could reach out to them, or do the DNA Angels?
The DNA Search Angels do things for free.
Okay.
And so it's not charged for the service. And we just use our expertise and solve these mysteries.
Okay. At Roots Tech, I met a side shoot off of that of a group who do social work and help people who find out that, their father's not their father, for example, or something like that, to emotionally walk through and help resolve family conflicts that arise as a result of these surprises.
Yes, it's so helpful to have that support system and people that have experience in it. And there's people, like you mentioned, that have set up groups where they provide, they've even have some get-togethers where they have counselors or others come in and talk and people share their story, but they also have counselors that can work one-on-one with people to help them go through the emotional process.
And printed public, books and things like that can guide you where to go to help find a bigger picture.
Right. And that's a lot of times I'm solving the mystery, but there's a whole emotional thing that you deal with before and after that.
Right. So
wonderful. Well, I think it's probably about time that we end this part and get started with have a short break. This has been wonderful information, Rick, on this, and I'm sure there are several more questions. I've got a whole bunch of questions myself on the things that you could talk about a little bit later. For example, those of us who are members of Family Search, we have access to Ancestry. What part of this do we already have? And you mentioned Ancestry Pro something. How does that tie in? and half a dozen other things that we could talk about. What you talk about centimorgans. I don't even know what a centimorgan is.
Yep, that'd be good. That'd be a good thing to start on the next time.
So, okay. Now, for those of you who are watching on Facebook, you'll have to log off. We'll be finished here in just a second, and then log back on again for the Q&A. And Rick has a whole bunch of illustrations to show us more. So you'll have to log off. If you're on Zoom, if you're a member of our Utah Valley Technology and Genealogy group, just stay on, because then it will be back on with the same program, same link in just in the next few minutes. Okay, I think that's the end of our first class, and Jerry Castillo, who's our host today, will stop the recording, and then we'll start again in about 3 or 4 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever it takes. Thanks, appreciate it.